Hello, this is a video on solving rational equations, or equations that contain fractions. Alright, so our first example is 1/6 plus 1/8 equals 1 over x. Now the good news is that we have an equation. Bad news, we have fractions. But since we have an equation, that makes things nicer. Alright, so first thing you look for in all your fractions there is a common denominator. Alright, so least common denominator in this case would be 24x. Once we have the least common denominator, we already know that we can pretty much do anything we want to an equation as long as we do it to both sides of that equation. So what we're going to do is take 24x and multiply both sides of the equation by that. Why? Because we can. Alright, so when we do that though, it's this entire side here on the left is going to get multiplied by 24x. Which means then that we're going to use the distributive property and essentially multiply every single term on the left side here by 24x. 24x times 1/6 plus 24x times 1/8 equals 24x times 1 over x. And the reason why we do that is because now each of these fractions go away. 6 goes into 24x, leaving behind 4x. Plus 8 goes into 24 3 times and leaves behind 3 times x times 1, which is just 3x, equals, these x's disappear and you're left with 24 times 1, which is just 24. Combine the 4x and the 3x to get 7x. Equals 24, and then divide by 7 and you get 24 sevenths. So the solution is 24 sevenths. Now there is one extra step involved when solving rational equations, and that is to check your answers. Now you don't have to check them completely. Really what you're looking for is to see, does the number that we have down here for our solution make any of our denominators 0? Because 0 in the denominator makes the expression undefined. So we notice here that we only have an x here. If you plug 24 sevenths into x there, you do not get a 0 in the denominator. So we're cool, we're happy, we're going to go about our merry way. Alright, so let's try another one. Let's try x minus 7 over x plus 2 plus, and then all of that plus 3 is equal to 1/4. Alright, so let's find the least common denominator again. Alright, so find the common denominator, which in this case would be 4 times x plus 2. Now we're going to take this least common denominator and multiply both sides of the equal sign, both sides of the equation, by this LCD, which means we're going to multiply both parts here by the LCD. So we'd have 4 times x plus 2 times x minus 7 over x plus 2 plus 3 times 4 times x plus 2. Now I encourage you to leave the LCD factored. Don't distribute that out and make 4x plus 8 when you're coming over here. It makes things a little bit easier. Then 4 times x plus 2 multiplied by 1/4. The x plus 2's go away, which was the whole point of doing this. And you're left behind 4 times x minus 7. And I would just write that as 4 times x minus 7 plus, so that's just 12. 3 times 4 is 12 times x plus 2 equals, right over here, the 4's disappear. And we're left with x plus 2 times 1, which is just x plus 2. The whole point is to get rid of the fractions to make our equation look a little bit easier. Alright, so distribute through, we have 4x minus 28 plus 12x plus 24 is equal to x plus 2. Alright, again, we have a linear equation. So we want to get all the x's on one side and everything that does not have an x to the other side of the equal sign. Alright, so on the left side we got 4x plus 12x, which is 16x, and then subtract this x from the right side and you're left with 15x on the left side. Then on the left side we have negative 28 plus 24, which would be a negative 4. So add 4 to both sides, and you get 2 plus 4, which gives you 6. So I am leaving out a couple of steps there, leaving for you guys to fill in the gap. And then divide both sides by 15 to solve for x, and x just reduces down to 2/5. And again, taking 2/5 and plugging it in for x up here does not make our denominator go to 0. So we're happy. All right, so this is a little bit longer. Now, in order to find the least common denominator, you need to factor all your denominators. So this one here factors into x minus 3 times x minus 4. Well, that's nice. All right, so now we can figure out what the LCD would be. LCD equals. There are only two different factors, and we need both of them for their LCD. So x minus 3 times x minus 4. All right, now remember what our plan is: to multiply both sides of the equation by this LCD. All right, so if we take x minus 3 times x minus 4 and multiply it by this first fraction here, what happens? Well, the x minus 3's go away and the x minus 4's go away, and you're just left with 6. Everybody see that? All right, let's try it again. If you take this LCD and multiply it times this middle fraction here, this x minus 3 goes away and this x minus 3 goes away, and you're left with 2x times x minus 4. So you can just write that down as 2x times x minus 4. Then if you take the LCD and multiply by the right side of the equation, this x minus 4 and this x minus 4 goes away, and you're left with 3x times x minus 3. So you can kind of leave out that intermediary step that we were doing before if you would like. If you do not want to do that, by all means put that step in where you write the LCD right next to each of the individual terms on both sides of the equation, and then go through and cancel out your denominators. 6 plus 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. All right, 3x squared minus 9x. All right, so what type of an equation do we have now? Well, we have a quadratic equation because of the x squared running around. So to solve quadratic equations, remember everything on one side and 0 to the other side. So I'm going to move everything over to the right. So I'm going to subtract 2x squared from both sides. So 3x squared minus 2x squared leaves you just an x squared. Then let's add 8x to both sides. So negative 9x plus 8x would give you a negative x. And then subtract 6 from both sides, and you get 6. So we have 0 equals x squared minus x minus 6. Factors into x minus 3 times x plus 2. And then what do you do with each of those factors? Set each one of those equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. X plus 2 is equal to 0. And we get x equals 3 and x equals negative 2. All right, but now what do we need to do? We need to make sure that our answers down here do not make any of our denominators go to 0. Well, if you take 3 and plug it in right there for x, you get 3 minus 3, which is 0. All you need is one fraction to have the denominator go to 0 to say, all right, we can't use you. All right, what about negative 2? None of your denominators go to 0. So x equals negative 2 is the solution to our equation. So this x equals 3, it's called an extraneous solution, just meaning that it's not a solution to our original equation. And so we have to make sure that these possible solutions down here that we get do not make any of our denominators equal to 0. And if they do, you throw them out. So yes, that means that sometimes you will get an equation that will have no solution. And that's just the way things go. All right, hope this helps. Study well. Please let me know if you have any questions.